Nothing grew in my garden. Even weeds scuffed at my barren rectangle of earth. All I wanted was a healthy patch of strawberries so that I could stop buying oversized genetic monstrosities from Walmart. Success evaded me like a housefly on meth. I do not know what I was doing wrong. I filled my plot with bucket loads of soil. I used premium fertilizer. I consistently watered every day, and there was enough direct sunlight to charbroil meat. I put in lots of sweat-drenched effort, and I did not have a single green sprout to show for it. I dove headfirst into the complex and fickle science of horticulture. I found gardening forums, scans of old magazines, and YouTube videos that guaranteed a verdant cornucopia. I even had a long chat with the elderly ladies at the local community garden. Despite all this fantastic advice, my efforts all fell flat. It felt like my green thumb had rigor mortis and fallen off. I was growing desperate. My fragile ego was far too invested in this project, and I was willing to cheat, whatever form that may take. That is when I decided to use bone meal. It turns out young strawberries need phosphorus for healthy root growth, and a fantastic source of phosphorus comes from ground up bones. I could easily buy bone meal at any garden supply store. However, given my pattern of repeated failure, I figured the generic store-bought stuff would not be strong enough. So, I checked in with my heron supplier on the dark web. He always knows how to obtain the best product. "Bone meal? No problem," he said in an encrypted message. "I'll send you a fat bag of the stuff right away." 2 weeks later, there was a knock at my front door. I opened it and found a UPS delivery driver huffing and puffing with an unwieldy sack on his shoulder. I brought it inside and tore it open. It was filled with a chalky white powder. Included inside was a note in Cyrillic that I did not understand. The return address said it came from Lviv. I rushed outside and completely covered my garden with the bone meal. I spread it so thick and even that it looked like winter came early. I knew the resultant growth was not going to be instant, but I still stood over my plot, eager and hopeful. The next morning, I checked on the status of my garden, and I was floored. Green leaves were already sprouting in diverse patches. Clearly, the bone meal was having an effect, and in only a few short hours, I was seeing results. I consoled myself that my bad luck was finally ebbing away. Soon, I would have a bountiful assortment of sweet and succulent strawberries. I was overjoyed. Later that same afternoon, I checked on my strawberries again. Now, they were twice as large, and many more patches had appeared. I looked closer and found the first incipient green berries making their debut. Wow, I thought to myself. I could not believe how fast they were coming in. After enduring failure for so long, success was a welcome change. That night, I wanted to celebrate with some skip the dishes delivery, but the food never showed up. The next morning, I eagerly inspected my garden. What I found blew my expectations out of the water. My garden was not only growing, it was thriving. The strawberry bush now came up to my waist. The gargantuan fruit that hung from its branches looked like they belonged in Jurassic Park. I reached in and retrieved the perfect strawberry. I placed it in my mouth and chewed. Words cannot describe the ecstasy that I felt. It was not sweet, so much as sublime. It was the platonic, ideal type of what a strawberry should be. Once more, I stuck my hand into the bush to tear away another delectable morsel, when I felt a sharp stabbing pain. I recoiled, looked at my arm, and found a crimson rivulet of blood. I examined the strawberry bush and discovered long, pointy thorns that dotted every inch of the bush's many green stems. They resembled the thorns you would find on a rose bush, but longer and more serrated. I would have to be more careful. I did not realize strawberry bushes had thorns. As I was leaving, I swore I felt an uncanny movement within the bush, like a shudder or an agitated quiver. Since there was no wind, I assumed the heat was getting to me. I dismissed it as a side effect of too much sun and not enough hydration. I checked the mailbox, but it was empty. I went back inside. That night, I still felt like celebrating. I was disappointed that Skip the Dishes did not show up, so I ordered pizza instead. Once again, no food showed up. I turned on the porch light, but my pizza never arrived. The next morning, I checked once more on my garden. The strawberry bush was now a strawberry hedge. It towered over me and extended well beyond the confines of my garden plot. Long, creeping vines snaked along the ground like invasive tentacles. I reached in for another strawberry, but stopped short. Deep within the mass of vegetation, I could make out a foreign object. I was mindful of the thorns and carefully spread back the foliage. Inside, I saw a Skip the Dishes bag, a cardboard pizza box, and a bundle of unopened mail. Despite the heat, I was frozen. Something was wrong. Dreadfully wrong. Maybe the Skip the Dishes guy, the pizza delivery person, and the mailman all came down with collective disinterest in their work. Maybe they all decided they had had enough and flung their deliverables into the bush. Maybe they were all at home perusing the classifieds for a new career. I almost convinced myself that this was the truth, until I saw, within the strawberry bush, 3 freshly skinned skulls being sucked into the earth. To make matters worse, the strawberries looked wrong. I grabbed a strawberry the size of a large bell pepper. I could feel it squirm in my grip, as though it was filled with thousands of worms that writhed just beneath the surface of his bumpy red skin. I wanted to take a bite and savor the delicious ecstasy, but I held back. Instead, I brought it inside the kitchen. I placed the cutting board on the counter and made an incision at the top, chopping the berry in half. I recoiled in horror when I failed to find the strawberry center I expected. Instead, the insides resembled a miscarried fetus. There were slime-covered bits of flesh that appeared to be undeveloped or malformed organs. The sweet fruit juice was mixed with pulpy viscera, and there was even the beginnings of a vertebra and a spinal cord that extended up the length of the berry and into the stem. What have I created? I just wanted fresh strawberries. I did not want this monstrosity that was ripe with malevolent purpose. I did not want this abomination that was becoming morbidly obese with evil by feeding upon innocent couriers. It had blood on its leaves, and I, as its cultivator, had blood on my hands. I had to do something. I had to destroy this fruity hellspawn. I waited until night. I approached the bush hesitantly, a flashlight in one hand and a jerry can in the other. In the dark, I could hear the insane chattering of hundreds of grotesque berries. I directed my flashlight into the bush and found every strawberry had a miniature mouth that flexed open and closed like a frenzied piranha about to feast on a fresh carcass. In place of teeth were rows of jagged seeds, all laid out in a sinister rictus. I held up the jerry can and was greeted by a chorus of hissing fruit and fluttering leaves. The whole bush seemed to rock back and forth, like it was trying to free itself from its earthy confines. A spiked tendril shot out and struck me in the face. I backed away and wiped off a swath of fresh blood. I doused the bush with a splash of gasoline and then lit the abomination on fire. There was a loud whoosh, followed by 1,000 tiny screams. Soon the bush was engulfed in a pillar of flame. Each strawberry burst with a violent pop, sending clods of seedy red innards flying in all directions. I waited until the strawberry bush was reduced to smouldering cinders. I poured water over the burnt corpse of my plant and was greeted by a prolonged hiss as the last of the fire died out. I then picked up my shovel and dug up my entire garden. I grabbed a box of kosher salt from the kitchen and salted the earth. If it was good enough for Carthage, it was good enough for me. My experiment in gardening was over. Buying plastic trays of mutant strawberries did not seem so bad anymore. I would be content for the rest of my life if my garden grew nothing but sand dunes. Gardening filled a vacuum that needed to be filled. I needed a new hobby. So I decided to buy an aquarium, and the most beautiful betta fish you have ever seen. It is difficult to mess up a fish, right? Nope. The fish grew listless and dull. He refused to nibble on the tiny pellets of fish food I sprinkled into his tank. Soon, I was growing concerned for the health of my poor betta. I needed better food. So I checked in with my heron supplier on the dark web. He always knows how to obtain the best product. Fish food? No problem, he said in an encrypted message. I'll send you a fat bag of the stuff right away.